Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, January 13th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look, 2021, sorry. Today we're going to be taking a look at the amount of Americans who will support removing President Trump from office just 7 days until he's actually going to be forcefully kicked out of office. Now, Inauguration Day is a week away, and we are expecting to see an incoming administration with a number of new appointments, a number of new things, a shakeup in the entire United States government. The Democratic Party will retain control of the House of Representatives, and for the first time since 2008, when they were last elected altogether, the Democratic Party will control the United States Senate, House, and presidency after an election victory. The last time this was all together was actually technically 2011 because all of those Democrats were kicked out in 2010. But the last time an election that where the Democratic Party was able to win all three, that was this election. And that's what the Democratic Party is going to have moving forward. But that won't impact the amount of people that will be supporting or not supporting removing President Trump in the United States Senate. Now, it's very evident that the United States House of Representatives today is going to end up voting to impeach President Trump. It looks as if every single Democrat is on board, which is more than enough. You just need 218 in order to impeach a president, actually a majority. So it really all depends on the amount of representatives there, but you need 218 at least with a full governing body. And it looks as if there are some major Republicans that are actually jumping on, most notably Representative Liz Cheney from the state of Wyoming. She is the incumbent Republican in that district. It is one of the most Republican districts and states in the United States. It doesn't have as large of a population as other districts, so it only has one district in the entire state, but she is the third highest ranking Republican in the entire United States House of Representatives. She has a very strong future. But after this, I'm voting yes on President Trump's impeachment statement, it looks as if it's going to be a little bit more grim for her. She was someone who could have swooped in to become Speaker of the House if the Republicans win the House of Representatives back in 2022. But after this, she probably won't garner much support from the Trump-loving representatives in this entire House of Representatives makeup. But she is a top-ranking Republican official, number 3 in the entire nation. So that's something that may sway some Republicans. They're holding a vote on it, I believe, momentarily. I think they actually may have started by the time that this video is gone on. But her statement definitely is something that could convince some Republicans, to vote for President Trump to be removed. However, Mitch McConnell has announced that he isn't expected to, not necessarily announced, it's expected that Mitch McConnell will not allow the United States Senate to reconvene by the time that Trump leaves office. So this probably won't go to a Senate vote unless something happens with McConnell or other Senate Republicans. It probably won't come to a vote. The Democrats don't control the Senate up until Joe Biden is in office. Yes, those senators are in there, some of them, not all of them, because we just had a special election, still time to make sure that all the results are clear and done and certified. But these senators will not be in the majority on the Democratic side until Kamala Harris is VP, because she is the tie-breaking vote. So for right now, it's actually Mike Pence. After Joe Biden is inaugurated in just 7 days, the Democrats will be in control. But you don't just need a simple majority in order to remove a president from office. You actually need a supermajority, 67 votes in the United States Senate. So looking at that, it's going to be a lot more difficult for the Democratic Party to convince 18, 19 Republican senators to move over to their side and vote in that direction. But the amount of Americans that actually support President Trump is alarming. Support President Trump being removed from office, is alarming because the majority of the American people support removing President Trump. When the Democratic Party impeached President Trump back in 2019, and then it went to a Senate vote in early 2020, the overwhelming majority of Americans really thought that, President Trump should not be removed. While they thought he should be impeached by the House of Representatives, people were saying that he should not be removed, that this is a lesson learned. There were senators who even used that exact statement. And looking at this election, this potential vote, it's very different. And looking at that 52.7% of Americans who support removing President Trump, I actually have to look back at the 2020 presidential election results, because Joe Biden actually received less of the vote than the amount of people who support removing President Trump, which indicates that maybe President Trump has lost a portion of his one electorate back in 2020. And that's something that we saw in 2016. Almost immediately after he was inaugurated, he lost support from portions of the electorate that elected him just a few months prior. And that actually indicated that Donald Trump wouldn't exactly have an easy pathway to re-election in 2020. He outperformed what we expected him to do, but he by no means won the election, and he lost the popular vote by 5 percentage points. Right now, there's about an 11-point difference between the amount of Americans who support removing President Trump and do not support removing President Trump. That 42% number is extremely low. It actually correlates more with the popularity rating of President Trump amongst likely or registered voters more than it does with the 2020 presidential election results. But unlikely and registered voters, President Trump actually has a higher approval rating than if you compare it to amongst registered adults. If you do all polls, it actually dips down to 40%, but amongst adults, it's all the way down to 39.5%. So amongst the American public, it's a lot lower in terms of approval than it is amongst likely or registered voters. It goes from 40% down to 40.3 down to 39.5. It doesn't seem like a lot, but hitting high 30s is something that President Trump hasn't done in a very, very long time, and something that he is going to be very afraid of doing because he's right on the verge. Right on the verge. I mean, the last time he was in the 30s wasn't even in this year. It might not have even been in last year. It might have been right here. Early 2019. So nearly 2 years later, almost exactly 2 years later, would Donald Trump dip down below an additional, 40%. So that's something that President Trump needs to look out for. But in terms of the Americans that support removing President Trump, obviously the majority of it is coming from the Democratic Party. But this could actually sway some Senate Republicans, if they do have the chance to do so, to potentially support removing President Trump, because if they come from swing states and they may lose that independent/Democratic vote that they had won in the past, well, they may be inclined to say they would support impeaching President Trump. We've seen a number of Republican senators calling on President Trump to resign. Lisa Murkowski, it's been indirectly stated by Mitt Romney. He voted to convict him last time. I can't imagine he wouldn't do it again. Some other Senate Republicans that aren't exactly as well known, but looking at the amount of Senate Republicans that need to go over to the Democratic side, they're going to need more than 3 or 4 in order for this to actually happen. But it looks as if even 1 in 6 Republicans support removing President Trump. That's a very significant amount. Nearly 50% of independents support removing President Trump. It's not even a question about impeachment. If it was a question about impeachment, the numbers would be much higher. This is a question about completely removing President Trump, even with such a short period of time left. People want to send a statement to President Trump, and also this would prohibit him from running in 2024. So based off of an election, looking at the numbers, the Republican Party might actually have some type of electoral incentive to actually encourage Donald Trump not to run again in 2024, or possibly even prohibit him from doing so. Because I can easily see President Trump trying to run for running to be elected again in 2024 and getting a significant amount of the primary support. But looking at the amount of Republicans who support removing him from office, well, 16% is still something that is very alarming for President Trump. Very, very alarming. They also have the more detailed questions here. There are a number of polls, but the fact that 52.7% of Americans support removing President Trump with just 7 days left really goes to show that President Trump is disapproved of by a very significant portion of the electorate. On top of that, this is not something that can be celebrated. This is not something that President Trump can look at as he's leaving office, as he's looking back on his legacy, down to a point where as soon as he's leaving office, if these numbers hold, the majority of Americans want him out. This was not the case for any president besides Nixon in modern political history. This simply was not the case. Even under George Bush, there were no grounds to impeach George Bush that were presented at the time. There was no discussion that was as large as this, to a point where Bush was being possibly, convicted by the United States Senate or even impeached by the House of Representatives. Neither political party really rose that type of discussion. Obviously, there's always going to be some type of discussion for impeachment for any president, but nowhere near in comparison to what we saw and currently are seeing for Donald Trump. And I think that largely reflects on the character of President Trump, that he is possibly going to be the only president who is impeached twice. And now that the majority of Americans support removing him, it's not even a question of impeachment. That's a done deal. The majority of Americans support removing President Trump. Well, it looks as if that's something that if the Senate is able to convene and able to vote on, that maybe some Republicans would be incentivized to do so. Maybe not so much because they want to appease their constituents, but more so because they want to save their own political party. Because there has never been a president in history that has been convicted by the United States Senate. Never once. There have been 3 presidents who have been impeached. As of today, there is only one president who has ever been impeached twice, and that is President Trump. So the 3 that were impeached before, someone back in the 1800s. He was actually one vote away from being removed by the Senate, but he was saved. Bill Clinton was impeached, but nowhere near to being removed. President Trump was impeached, but nowhere near to being removed. But this time, if Republicans want to, try to win the election in 2024, they may be politically incentivized to vote to remove President Trump. The fact that the majority of Americans now support this means that they are now willfully voting against the public's opinion, against the way that the public wants this election, or not this election, this vote to turn out. Because the fact that there are even more voters that, believe that that Donald Trump should be removed from office versus the amount of people that voted for Joe Biden, I think that's pretty significant. That means there is some crossover support. Maybe it's from third-party voters. Maybe it's from people who didn't vote. Maybe it's from people who voted for Donald Trump. You never know. But the fact that it's higher is definitely telling. And the fact that Donald Trump received 46.8% of the vote and only 41.7% say they don't support removing him, this is not even, like I had mentioned this 4 times, not even a question of impeachment, a question of being removed. Well, 41.7% do not believe that President Trump should be removed from office, which is something that is very low. That's only 2 in 5 Americans. Only 2 in 5. And it correlates with President Trump's approval rating. It really does. And I think that as the days go on, it's possible that the don't support number just ticks up just because we are getting closer and closer. But after today's impeachment vote, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Senate Republicans to try to either convene or actually, hold a vote on it, and possibly for some Republicans to vote to convict President Trump. And this puts a number of Senate Republicans in a very difficult position because those who just won re-election, to be fair, some of them are probably safe. They don't need to actually focus too heavily because I can guarantee it in 6 years, we're not going to be talking about an impeachment vote too intently. But for those Senate Republicans that are up in 22 and in 24, if they come from a swing state and they don't want to be primaried, well, they may vote to keep President Trump. But also, if they want to win over some of those more liberal voters, then they may be inclined to vote to impeach President Trump. But for some of these Republicans that have just been reelected, they don't technically need to actually worry about their upcoming Senate election just because it occurred, it's finalized, it's done, whatever. But for those other Republicans that are up for re-election, they are going to have to just figure out whether or not this poses a real threat to them, either by being primaried, depending on their vote, or losing an election based off of their vote, or if this is just their civic duty, if this is just their American duty, because some of those Republicans who decided to impeach President Trump in the House or have announced that they will, even Liz Cheney, are prone to now being primaried because their elections are every 2 years. The right wing could very well fund a candidate who didn't or wouldn't vote in that case to impeach President Trump, and they could replace them in the United States House of Representatives. And by, through this vote, some of these representatives are now going to be fighting hard in some of their districts, just because now the right wing has a reason to go after them because they voted to impeach President Trump. But also, sometimes if they're in swing districts, this could actually help them because they were going to, try to win off the backs of independent and Democratic voters. If Republicans, even if they may not like the vote on impeachment, they may be forced to vote for the Republican because there is no other alternative. The primary could be there, but if this incumbent Republican goes through the primary and wins, well, the Republicans in those districts are definitely not going to be inclined to elect a Democrat. So it really all comes down to whether or not these representatives can survive being primaried, some of these Republican senators as well. And for some of them, listening to the majority of the American people saying President Trump should be removed from office in the United States Senate, that could be something that really drives a number of senators to actually end up voting to convict President Trump. But that's really all speculation. All we know for sure is that Donald Trump is going to be impeached. He's going to be the only president who has been impeached twice in United States history. But it all comes down to the Senate, and they may not even convene. And also, President Trump is out in 7 days, so it might just be a waiting game for Senate Republicans. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my post 2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.